Hello, everybody. We're going to read horror stories by the Crown. Yeah, it's by crownthecaylin. Peggy and her boyfriend Tommy were driving down a lonely stretch of highway at dusk when a thunderstorm came crashing down on them. Tommy slowed the car and they crept their way past a formidable abandoned house plastered all over the fences and trees with no trespassing signs. A mile past the house, the car hydroplaned. Peggy screamed as the car slid off the road, plunging down into a gully. The car slammed into a large boulder, throwing Peggy violently into the door before it came to rest under a pecan tree. Her head banged against the window, and a stabbing pain shot through her shoulders and arms. Tommy turned to her. "Are you all right? You're bleeding." Arm, shoulder. "Feel bad," Peggy managed to gasp. Tommy glanced cautiously at her right arm. "I think your arm is broken," he said, and he tore off his shirt and pressed it to the cut on her head. "I'm going to call for help," he said when it became obvious that the bleeding was not going to stop right away. But neither of them had their cell phones. "The house we just passed, we have a phone I can use," Tommy said. Peggy's eyes popped wide open at the statement. Despite her pain, she remembered the creepy abandoned house. "Stay here, a car will come." "I can't stay, Peggy," Tommy said. "It could take hours for another car to come, and you're losing too much blood." He tore another strip of her shirt and placed it gently on the cut on her head. Then he went out and retrieved a couple of blankets from the trunk to cover her with. "I'll be back as soon as I can." He raced out into the storm, shutting the dented car behind him. Peggy drifted in a kind of daze. Something at the back of her mind was making her uneasy. She slid down onto the floor and put her head on the seat, completely covering herself with the blankets, heads and all. Feeling safer, she allowed the weirdness caused by the wounds to take over and fall asleep. Peggy wasn't sure what woke her. Had a beam of light shone briefly through the blanket? Did she hear someone curse outside? She strained eyes and ears, but heard nothing, save the soft thudding of the rain, and no light shone through the blanket now. If Tammy had arrived with the rescue squad, there surely would be noise and light and many voices, but she heard nothing save the swish of the rain and occasionally thumping noise which she put down to the rubbing of the branches of the pecan tree in the wind. The sound should have been comforting, but it was not. Goosebumps crawl across her arms, even broken one, and she almost ceased breathing for some time, as some deep part of her inner mind instructed her to freeze and not to make a sound. She did not know how long fear kept her immobile. She did not know how long fear kept her immobile, but suddenly the raw terror seized, replaced by cold shivers of apprehension in a sick coil in her stomach that had nothing to do with her injuries. Something terrible had happened, she thought wearily, fear adding yet more fatigue to her already wounded body. Then she scolded herself for a ninny. It was just her sore head making her imagine things. Somewhat comforted by this thought, she dozed again, only thud sound of something gently tapping the roof. Thud, thud, pattering of the rain. Thud, thud, silence. Sometimes she would almost waken and listen to it in a puzzled manner. Thud, thud, patter of rain. Thud, thud, had a branch dislodged from the tree. Peggy wasn't sure how long she'd been unconscious when she was awakened by a bright light blazing through the window of the car and the sound of a male voice exclaiming in horror. A door was wrenched open and someone crawled inside. She lifted her head and looked up at a young state policeman. Miss, are you alright? He asked and then turned over his shoulder to call for help. Peggy told the officers her story and begged them to look for Tommy. They deftly avoided answering her and instead called paramedics. As the paramedics carried her carefully up the slope of the incline, Peggy looked back at the car and saw a grotesque figure hanging from a branch of the pecan tree. For a moment, her brain couldn't decipher what she was seeing in the bright light of the police car parked at the side of the road. Then she heard a thud sound as the foot of the figure scraped the top of the total car, and she started screaming over and over in horror. One of the police officers had hastened to block her view, and the paramedic fumbled for some Valium to give her as her mind finally registered what she had seen. Tommy managed Tommy Mango's dead body was hanging from a pecan tree just above the car and nailed to the center of its chest was a no trespassing sign. So her boyfriend Tommy died. He was hanging from the pecan tree. Oh my god, that's scary, guys. That is so scary. Next part. Well, we can see from the picture it says, I am dead. So the story is called Writing on the Wall. When I was younger, there was a ruined building at the bottom of our streets. All the kids in the area kept well away from it because the rumor was that it was haunted. Sorry. The concrete wall of the old two-story building were cracked and crumbling. The windows were broken and shards of glass lay all over the floor inside. One evening, a test of courage, my best friend and I decided to explore the creepy old place. We, we climbed in through a window at the back of the building. The whole place was dirty, and there was a layer of mud on the wooden floor. As we dusted ourselves off, we looked up and were shocked to see that someone had written the words "I am dead" on the wall near the ceiling. Probably just some teenager trying to scare kids, I said. Yeah, probably, replied my friend nervously. We explored more of the rooms on the ground floor. In a room that appeared to have once been a kitchen of sorts, we found more writing on the wall. It read, I am in a room upstairs. Okay, now this is getting very scary. We walked up the creaking stairs to the second floor. I led the way and my friend followed close behind. I wasn't scared, but he was beginning to get a little jittery. When we came to the top of the stairs, we turned left and walked cautiously down the narrow hallway. At the end of the hallway was a closed door with some more ominous writing on it. You will find me in this room. By now, my friends was shaking with fear. I was quite creeped out too, but I didn't want to show it. He told me he didn't want to go any further, but I insisted, telling him there was nothing to be afraid of. I turned the handle and the door creaked open. We stepped into the room and found it empty. There were two closed doors on either side. There was more creepy writing on the wall. It reads, "My head is on the left and my body is on the right." As soon as my friend saw this, he completely lost his nerve. He gave a yelp and turned to run away. I caught hold of his arm, but he shook me off and fled out through the open door. I heard his footsteps disappearing up down the hallway. I held my ground. I was determined to be brave and overcome my fear. Mustering all my courage, I opened the door to the right and walked inside. I walked to the other side of the room, and on the wall, written in tiny letters, were the words, "My body is underneath." I looked down at the floor. I was standing on some more writing on the floorboards. I stepped back and saw the words, "My head's coming from the room behind you. Turn around." I heard the door behind me creaking and quickly turned. There was a shadow moving behind the door. So suddenly something rolled into the room and came to a rest against the wall. It was my friend served it was my friend's severed head. His head severed head. His dead sightless eyes seemed to stare at me, screaming in horror. I flung myself out through the open window and fell 2 stories to the ground. I landed on my side, breaking my arm. In horrible pain, I ran home crying and yelling for my parents. The police were called and they searched the old ruined building. At first, they didn't find anything. There wasn't even any writing on the wall. They, they combed the house from top to bottom, but didn't find any traces of my friend. Then they pried up the floorboards. He was laying underneath. They never found his head. Oh my gosh, they disappeared. Sorry, wrong, wrong button. Okay, next part, guys. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Shh. Car keys. One night, a father and his daughter were driving down a deserted country road. They were returning home after spending the entire day visiting the girl's mother in a hospital. Listening to the sound of the rain drumming on the car roof, the girl began to doze off. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. The father struggled with the steering wheel, but the car skidded off the wet road and slammed into the stone wall. After checking that his daughter was uninjured, the man got out of the car to survey the damage. Both of the front tires had a large punctures, and the right fender was crumpled against the wall. The rest of the car had survived unscathed. "It must have driven over something on the road," he explained to his daughter. "Whatever it was, it blew out both of the tires." "You can fix it, right?" asked his daughter, somewhat shaken by the accident. "No," replied her father, shaking his head. "I've only got one spare in the boot. I have to walk back into town and find somebody to tow the car." he said. It isn't that far from here. You wait in the car while I'm gone. Okay, she said reluctantly. But please don't take too long. The man could see in his daughter's eyes that she was frightened. Sit tight, replied her father, as he slammed the car door. I'll be back as soon as possible. His daughter watched him in the rearview mirror as he trudged off down the road in pouring rain and disappeared into the night. More than an hour passed, and her father still had not returned. The girl began to wonder what was taking him so long. She was very worried he has because he should have been back by now. Just then she glanced into the rearview mirror and saw a figure in the distance walking towards the car. She thought it was her father, but she turned around to take a closer look. She realized there that it was a strange man. He was dressed in overalls and had a big bushy beard. He was carrying something large in his left hand, swinging back and forth. She was something about him made her very nervous as he approached. She stared out the back window and squinted her eyes. In the dim light, she could just make out what he was clutching in his right hand. It was a big, sharp butcher's knife. Thinking quickly, the terrified girl locked both doors in the front of the car, then jumped into the back and locked the rear doors. When she looked up again, she saw that the strange man had stopped in his tracks and seemed to be staring directly at her. Suddenly, the man raised his arms and the girl let out a bloody, curdling scream. In his left hand, he was clutching her father's rear head. Yaski was screaming and screaming. She couldn't stop herself. Her heart was pounding. She struggled to breathe. The grotesque expression on her father's face was horrifying to behold. His mouth was hanging open and his eyes were rolled back in his head. When the man reached the car, he shoved his face right up against the window and glowered at her with her crazed, bloodshot eyes. Her hair was wild and matted with dirt. His face was covered in deep scars. For a moment, he just stood there in the driving rain, grinning at her like a madman. Then he reached into his pocket, took something out, and slowly lifted his left hand. Dun dun dun. Her father passed away, but this man with a large knife. Okay, next part. The manhole. One morning, a young Japanese girl named Mai was walking to school. On the way, she happened to see another girl playing at the end of the street. For some strange reason, the girl was jumping up and down. Mai knew that girl must be attending the same school as her because they were both wearing the same school uniform. When Mai got closer, she saw that the girl was jumping up and down on a manhole cover. Mai was puzzled. She wondered what the girl was doing, why she was jumping up and down on the same spot like that. She was insane. That was she insane? What was it? The game? As he was jumping, Mike heard the girl mutter to herself, "Three, three, 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 three." As Mike passed by, she recognized the girl. It was Haruka, a quiet and strange girl in her class who often the target of bullying. Sometimes the other girl in the class would just ignore Haruka, and the other times they would play cruel pranks on her. The teacher knew she was being bullied, but they just turned a blind eye and didn't bother getting involved. Realizing the school was starting in a few minutes, Mai hurried off, leaving the strange girl to her odd game. That day in class, Mai noticed that there was an empty desk. Haruka hadn't shown up for school. All day, Mai wondered what the girl was up to. When the school bell rang or the kids streamed out onto the streets, Mai walked home and on the way she came across Haruka again. The girl was still in the same spot she had been that morning. She was still jumping up and down. Maya walked up to the girl and stopped right in front of her. The girl just kept jumping as Maya wasn't there. She had a big smile on her face and was saying 99999. What are you doing next, Maya? Ruka didn't answer, just went on saying 99999. I asked you what were you doing, shouted Maya. The girl just ignored her and kept jumping up and down. Ma didn't particularly like or dislike the girl. She remembered calling the girl some cruel names in the past and bullying her along with her other classmates. What do you think you are? Mai shouted. Answer me, then I'll talk to you. On that moment, Mai had never hated Haruka like the others did, but the sight of that girl enjoying herself so much and ignoring her so completely filled Mai with anger. You better tell me what you're doing or you'll be sorry, warned Mai. The girl went on jumping happily as if she hadn't even heard Mai's warning. Suddenly, Mai lost her temper and pushed Haruko to the ground. My turn, said Mai, as she took the girl's place and stood on the manhole. Mai jumped up in the air at the exact moment Haruka reached out and removed the manhole cover. Mai fell straight down. The strange girl got to her feet and replaced the manhole cover. Then, with a big smile of satisfaction on her face, she started jumping up and down again. As she, as she jumped, she said 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. What the scariest story about the manhole cover. Video camera. This is a picture of a video camera and a person strapped by a barbed wire. A few years ago, there was a young man named Brian who went to the university. He didn't have enough money to live in the campus accommodation, so he had to rent an apartment on his own in the city. After he had been living there for a while, he began to notice some strange things happening. Often, when he came back from the college, the curtains in his bedroom would be drawn when he distinctly remembered having left them open when he left that morning. At, at other times, some of his belongings seemed to have been moved in other possessions were nowhere to be found. The strange occurrences started to creep Brian out, so the young man decided to talk to his friends, Trisha and Alex, about the situation. They met him at a local diner and over coffee. He told them all about the strange things he had noticed. Maybe I just be, maybe I just being paranoid, said Brian, but I just get the sneaky suspicions that someone is breaking into my apartment during the day while I'm at university. And what? Interrupted Alex, rearranging your cartoons and moving your stuff around. Who's in their right mind would bother doing that? You're not crazy, but you might have a stalker, said Tricia. It's possibly if it's true. I think the best thing to do is contact the police. What what can the police do? Asked Alice. They're not going to spend their time keeping your apartment under surveillance. Besides, there's no damage to any of your things. There's no sign of break-in. In short, there's no evidence. So what options then? Pleaded Brian. I can just do nothing. I know how you can put your mind at ease, said Tricia. It's easy. Just get a video camera, set it up in your bedroom, and leave it running when you go to college. If you really do have a stalker, you can show the tape to the police as evidence. That's a great idea, said Brian. And if you really got, and if you're really just paranoid and crazy, you can show the tape to your psychiatrist. Joke Alex. Well, it's kind of funny actually. That night, Brian borrowed Trisha's video camera and brought it home. The very next morning, he hid it discreetly under some folders on his desk. Before he went to college, he pressed the record button and left the running. During the day, while he sat taking notes in lectures, the young man forgot all about the video camera. It was not until he arrived home and went into his bedroom that he remembered his plan. Taking the video camera out of his hiding place, he pressed the stop button. Then he took out his mobile phone and called his friend. Hey Trisha, he said, I just got home. I'm going to watch the video. Cool, said Trisha. Don't hang up. Tell me if you see anything. He pressed play and watched the recording on the video camera's tiny screen. He saw himself leaving for the university in the morning and closing the bedroom door. Then there was nothing. He pressed fast forward and scanned through the video. The room was empty. Still nothing, he said. I can't wait, replied Trisha. Anyways, there's nothing worth watching on TV at the moment. OMG, cried Brian as he pressed play on the camera. What? What? Trisha begged excitedly. She liked the idea of the evidence. The door is opening, said Brian. It's a woman. What's she doing? Asked Trisha. Just standing there, closing the door and walking around. Oh my gee, so weird. What does she look like? Can't see her face. Long black streaky hair, tattered dress. Do you know her? No, don't recognize her at all. She is carrying a knife, a big kitchen knife. She's going through my trash. Now she's picking up my clothes and sniffing them. Ah, gross. What's wrong with her? She's going over to the closet. She just got into the closet. Fast forward and see if she does anything else. He scanned through the video for a while, but the room was empty. You know what this means, Brian? I have evidence now. I can go to the police and they'll take me seriously. I know, said Tricia. They have to. Alex is totally going to freak out when he sees this. No doubt. He didn't believe you, but I did. I know. You're a good friend. OMG. What? What? Brian pressed play again. The door is opening again, said Brian. Who is it? Asked Tricia. Oh, it's okay, said Brian. Yes, me coming home from college. He watched himself on the screen, shutting off the camera. Let's go to the police now, said Tricia. I'll go with you. We can show them the tape. Okay, I'll meet you at the diner in 15 minutes, said Brian as he grabbed the video camera. Okay, wait a minute, said Tricia. You said she go into the closet? Did she leave? Did she ever leave, Brian? Did she ever get out of the closet? A chill ran down Brian's spine behind him. He heard the closet door creak open. Brian, get out of here, screamed Tisha before it was too late. The phone was dead. When she tried to call her again, there was no answer. Later that evening, the police found the body of an 18-year-old college student lying in a pool of blood. He had been stabbed 21 times. The video camera was clutched in his cold, dead hands. When the police examined the camera, they discovered the memory card was missing. So she took the memory card. Oh God. Next story, please. Babysitting? When I dropped out of school, it wasn't easy to find work. Nobody seems to want to hire a girl with no qualifications. I was tired of applying for jobs advertised in newspapers and on the internet without receiving any replies. One day I spotted an ad for a job that was not so tempting, but I really needed the money. The ad says they were looking for a live-in babysitting to take care of three young children. It says no qualification necessary, they just require some young, responsible, and pretty. I called that number, and the phone was answered by a woman with a sweet and friendly voice. When I told her I was calling about the babysitting job, she hired me on the spot. That was quick. She didn't even want to meet me in person first, but she said she needed me to start immediately. I was delighted. Next morning, I drove over to the house to meet the family. As soon as I got there, I saw the house was beautiful, both inside and out. You could tell that the family was wealthy. The woman and her husband greeted me with broad smiles on their faces and introduced me to the children. There were two boys and a girl. Sebastian was 6 years old, Damien was 5, and Lenka was 4. The kids seemed to be nice, happy, and friendly. They were always polite, never fought with each other, and never made a mess. All they did was play alone or read a book. The parents announced that they were going out to dinner and wouldn't be home until late that night. They told me that children had already been fed, so all I had to do was get them ready for bed. That's simple enough. The mother gave me a phone number and told me to call her if there was an emergency. The father told me to make myself at home, and if I was hungry, he said I could take whatever I wanted from the refrigerator. Oh, that sounds nice. After the parents left, the children sat down on the sofa to watch TV. They were quiet and barely said a word. During commercial, I was feeling a bit hungry, so I went to the kitchen to make myself a snack. As I as I was rummaging around in the refrigerator, I couldn't help but notice two large jars that were stuck in the back of the fridge. Both of them were wrapped in plain brown paper and had a rubber band sealing at the rim. I wonder what on earth could be in them. My curiosity got better of me, so I took out of the jars and peeled back the brown wrapper to take a little peek. A little. It was full of long strips of fatty meat floating in the murky red liquid. I couldn't tell what kind of meat it was, but it didn't look like pork or beef. As I was about to put the jar back where I found it, I heard a noise behind me. It startled me so much I banged my head on on a shelf above me. When I turned around, Sebastian was standing in the doorway staring at me. Put that back, he said. That's not for you. The, the look in his eyes and the tone of his voice sent chills down my spine. Sorry, mother was looking for something to eat. Sebastian didn't reply. He just stood there staring at me. I placed the jar back in the refrigerator and shut the door. Sebastian turned around and went back to the living room. I had lost my appetite, so I went joined the children in the living room and watched cartoons with them. I was trying not to let my imagination get the better of me when the cartoon finished and the news came on. There was a story about a teenage girl who had gone missing. The police found her decomposing head in a dumpster. They said they had no idea what had happened to the rest of her. I was afraid the grisly news story would upset the children, so I changed the channel and told them it was time for bed. The kids didn't complain, they just walked up the stairs in a single file and went to the bedroom. I put them in in their pajamas and got them ready for bed. Then I tucked them and kissed them all good night and switched out the lights. When I went back downstairs, I was bored and had absolutely nothing to do, so I decided to watch a movie. I looked through the family DVD collection, but all they had were cartoons and Disney movies. On the bottom shelf, I spotted some old VHS tapes. One of them had a strange title. It was M Girls. They seemed rather curious, so I decided to take a look at it. I put the videotape in the VCR and pressed play, then sat down on the sofa and made myself comfortable while the video started. The first thing I noticed was that it was a home video. The family must have recorded it themselves. The parents and children were all laughing and looking like they were having fun. But when I turned it off, when I happened to notice someone else in the video, it was a girl who looked like she was in her late teens. It seems like she was the previous babysitter. She looked very familiar. It seems like I recognized her from somewhere. Perhaps she went to my school. Then it finally hit me. Oh my freaking god, I thought. It was the missing girl from the news report. My hands were shaking. My body was trembling. I just wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. I jumped out of the seat, injected the video, and put it back in its case. Then I remembered the jars in the refrigerator. I had to see what was in those jars. With the shutter, I went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Maybe I'm just overreacting, I thought. Reached out and took out the second jar. Peeling back the brown paper wrapper, I could see a long, pale hunks of meat and strips of fat floating in the red liquid. Some of the meat looked like it had skin on it. Human skin. I could also see what looks like strands of hair, long hair, human hair. I was so scared I felt like I was about to pee my pants. I ripped off the rubber bands that was sealing the jar and peered inside. There was an eyeball staring back at me, horrified. I dropped the jar and smashed it on the kitchen floor. I ran to the living room, put on my jacket, grabbed the videotape, and stuffed it into my pocket. When I came out to the hallway, Sebastian was standing at the foot of the stairs. What are you doing? What are you going? Standing at the foot of the stairs. Where are you going? He asked. I just remember. I stammered. I forgot something. I had to go home and get it. I'll be back in a few minutes. Damien and Lenka came running down the stairs. You can't go, screeched Damien. You can't leave us on our own. I'm calling your parents, shouted Lenka. She picked up the phone. I'm calling our parents, shouted Lenka as she picked up the phone and began dialing numbers. Sebastian grabbed hold of my leg and wouldn't let go. You have to stay, he's good. We're hungry. He gripped extremely tight, but I managed to shake him off and ran out the front door. I dashed in my car. I saw the parents pulling into the driveway. I didn't stop for a moment. I just jumped out into my car and locked all the doors. The teenagers were on the doorstep screaming and crying. The mother and father got out of the car and they come running over them with an angry look on their faces. What's wrong? They shouted. Where are you going? What's wrong? They shouted. Where are you going? Come back here. And then the answer just turned the key in the ignition and revved the engine. They started banging on the windows. I floored the accelerator and tore out there like a bat out of hell and never looked back. Then they come and then I stepped until I came to the police station. I told the police officers everything I knew and handed over the videotape as evidence. The police immediately dispatched two patrol cars. By the time they arrived at the house, the parents and children were gone. They just took the car and disappeared. The police searched the house and found jars in the refrigerator. They also found human flesh and bones in the basement. They did the test and confirmed that these were the remains of the missing girl. They never managed to track down the parents or the children. They're still out there somewhere, probably living under a different name, probably still on a hunt for new victims. Oh, the parents are the bad guys. Next part. Dark and lonely road. So much. So let's continue, you guys. When I was a young boy, I lived in a small town. Johnny Craig lived across the street from me. I was friends with his big brother. He was just a baby then. I saw him growing up, but I never paid much attention to him. Sometimes in the evening, my mother would send me out to the local store to buy a carton of milk or a bag of sugar. On the way to the shop, I had to pass a long, dark stretch of road. During the day, it was just a shady place lined with old gnarled trees and vacant lots where nothing had been built and nothing was ever going to be built. I was never afraid of it by day, but at night it was a different place, a lonesome place, a place of darkness and strangeness, a place of terror and fear. There was no house nearby, no streetlights. It was pitch black as black could be, dark as the deepest night. The tall trees blocked out the moon, and the stars casting their long shadows across the road. Whenever you have to go that way, you walk slower and slower. It was like stepping into a dark tunnel. Behind you were the lights of the houses, sounds of cars, and people walking along the sidewalk ahead of you. There was just a long, lonely stretch of darkness in which anything could be lurking, anything at all. Every time I had to pass the place at night, I would dread it. I keep hoping somebody would come along, so I would have to walk alone. But nobody ever came. As I walk along the dark stretch of road, I would keep my eyes fixed on the trees, half expecting to see something or someone lurking in there in the darkness. Perhaps it was the boogeyman. My mother had often told me about the boogeyman and how he waited in the dark places for boys and girls who strayed from the path. Perhaps it was a child predator. My mother had also warned me about evil men who tried to lure children with the promise of candy and puppy dogs. Perhaps it was something else, something worse. Out of the corner of my eye, I would catch a glimpses of misshapen figures crouching there in the pitch black, waiting for the moment when they would burst forth and pounce on me. Then, that silent and isolated area, they would begin tearing me and rending me and doing unspeakable things to me, and nobody would ever see me again. I'm not sure what I expected to see lurking in that lonely place at night. My imagination always got better of me. In my mind, it was a hideous creature, somewhere between animals and a man. It had long, spindly limbs and huge, sharp claws. It had wet, slimy skins and eyes that burned like fires. I imagine it holding in the branches of those old trees, dropping down without a sound and stalking the unwarrior boys and girls who walk past along the dark and lonely road at night. One night, it almost got me. I was walking down the lonely road, and all of a sudden, there wasn't any light up ahead. That's when I knew it was coming. I could just feel it waiting there in the darkness. I started running, desperate to get away, but I could feel it behind me. It was gaining on me. I could feel its breath on the back of my neck. I ran. I ran as fast as I could. I ran until I thought my heart would burst. It almost had me in its clutches, but I managed to get away. When I got back to the safety of my house, I looked at myself in the mirror, and there was a long jacket ripped in the back of my shirt, as if a sharp claw had tried to grab me and just missed me by an inch. That scared me real bad, and afterwards I hated going down the lonely road more than ever. Some nights I won't come back, I warned my mother. She just laughed and told me not to be silly. There's something out there in the dark, I told her. There's nothing in the dark that isn't there in the light, she assured me. What do adults know about the world? Grown-ups think they know everything. They place their trust in what they read, but they only read what is reported in the newspaper and on TV. They drive around in the cars and never had to walk anywhere at night. They don't know what goes on out there in the dark, in the wretched, lonely places where no light ever shines. In the darkness hangs like a cloud on the ground and no birds ever sing. I knew they wouldn't believe me. I knew there was nothing I could say to convince them that something or someone lived down there among the trees on a dark and lonely stretch of road. As I grew older, I gradually forgot about the lonely road. I got taller. I went to high school. I started playing football. I learned to drive, and I started dating girls. The year passed. Somehow, I forgot that thing that lurked there in the darkness. The memory of it still remains in my distant corner of my mind, but it was a memory locked away in a childhood. The year passed, but the year passed by, but I never thought about the other kids who had walked down that dark and lonely road at night. 3 days ago, Johnny Craig went missing. He lived across the street from me. I was friends with his big brother. He was just a baby then. I saw him growing up, but I never paid too much attention to him until he went missing. They found him in trees on a dark and lonely stretch of road. He found his body was torn and ripped and crushed almost beyond recognition. The police said he had been mauled by some kind of animal. That moment I heard about it, I knew what happened. Johnny Gregg had been murdered by the thing my childhood fears had created. The thing I had conjured up in my imagination. I had left it on the dark and lonely stretch of road. I had left it there to wait for some scared little boy who happened to be walking home one dark night. A little boy who couldn't run fast as I could run. After that town cut down the trees and put up streetlights, the stretch of road isn't dark and lonely anymore. The thing that lurked there is gone now. It's gone somewhere else where the people are unsuspecting to some other small town. A small town like yours where it will wait again just as it did there. It will wait for some other fighting little boy or girl to come along. It's only a matter of time. Next story. Please continue with the next part, please. Oh my gosh, it's scary human. Antique doll. Too much word. On the morning of her birthday, Lucy's mother woke up her Lucy's mother woke on the morning of her birthday. Lucy's mother woke her up and told her a package had arrived in the mail and it was addressed to her. The girl hurriedly unwrapped the gift and was horrified at what she found inside. It was the most disgusting old doll she had ever seen. It was completely bald and the skin was cracked and caked in dirt. The worst thing of it all was his teeth. They were long, pointy, sharp, and beastly, looked like an animal fangs. With a shiver, she took the doll and threw it in the corner. Her mother scolded her, telling her that someone had gone to a lot of trouble to send her this antique doll. Her mother told her she had better appreciate it. Lucy tried to protest, but her mother would not listen. She forced the young girl to keep the doll so to put her mind at rest. Lucy stuffed the antique doll into the little cupboard under the stairs pile under the stair behind a pile of shoes where she wouldn't have to look at the ugly, evil little thing. It was not until a few nights later Lucy was lying in bed that she heard a noise, a shuffling noise, which went on for about 5 minutes. Did a brief dragging noise and finally a scuttling like footsteps walking very fast. But now Lucy was shaking in her bed with fear, unable to move. Then she thought she heard a faint raspy voice whispering quietly from downstairs. Lucy was always slept with door open and the landing light on as she was a little scared of the dark. She heard the voice say, "Lucy." I'm on the first step, and then loud scrabbling again as whatever was speaking apparently turned tail and returned to the place of hiding. Lucy was so scared that she didn't sleep a wink that night, but lay in fear until the break of dawn. Her mother got her out for school. Lucy tried to explain to her mother what happened the night before, but she was so tired that her mother passed it off as just a dream. She began to believe it might be the case. Of course, it wasn't. Lucy begged her parents to let her throw the antique down the garbage, but they insisted that it was a present and she had to keep it. So Lucy reluctantly went back to bed, telling herself that it had only been a dream. She checked the cupboard under the stairs, but the door was exactly where Lucy had left her. Night, Lucy fought sleep, but she eventually drifted off, even though she had fought sleep. Presently, the deep, disembodied voice woke Lucy again. She wondered if she could hear it in her head. Lucy, I'm on the fourth step, it said, then came to a scuffling noise, and the voice didn't reoccur that night. Lucy was crying by now, and she didn't sleep that night. At school, Lucy told her friend about the door, and of course they laughed at her. Lucy couldn't only think that it was the door was climbing 4 steps at a time. Then there was only one more night to go. That night, Lucy decided to shut her bedroom door. When her mother turned her lights off, she asked why Lucy was no longer scared of the dark. Lucy replied that night she was, and could she leave her light on instead of the hall light? But her mother pointed out that her bedroom light was so bright it would keep her awake, and said no. Therefore, Lucy agreed to just sleep without a light. She opened the bedroom curtains instead to the light the room a little anyway. Just as she began to doze, she heard the noise. And then the voice came very clear this time. Lucy, I'm on the top step. In the darkness of her bedroom, Lucy heard a click and trembled with fear. She wasn't sure, but she thought she could see her bedroom door open very, very slowly. Next morning, Lucy's parents found her body at the bottom of the stairs. They guessed that she had been on her way to the toilet during the night in the darkness. He had slipped and fallen down the stairs, breaking her neck. The antique doll was found beside her body and was buried with Lucy. Everyone said it was a tragedy. It was. Next part. Crazy lady. Let's continue, guys, because I like to finish this whole story, guys. I'm sorry the videos. I'm sorry the video is long. If you made it that part, put a skull emoji in the comment section below. Bob had been out in the woods all day, hunting for deer. Perfect. When he got back to his little cabin, it was dark. He was shocked to find that front door was standing open cautiously. He crept into the cabin and was surprised to see a young lady standing in front of the fireplace. She was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. She had really pretty face and long blonde hair that came down to her shoulders. She was wearing a white vest that was tied up over her stomach. in a pair of blue jeans. The act the the accident her curves. The young lady said her name was Jessica, and she was lost. She had come out to the woods to stay at her father's lodge, but had wandered off and couldn't find her way back. She says she has spent all day wandering in the forest trying to find help. Bob said that he would help her, but it was too late to go walk into the woods. She would have to stay the night in his cabin, and in the morning he would lead her back to her father's lodge. Jessica thanked him and offered to cook him dinner in return of his kindness. Over dinner, they talked for a while, and Bob was glad to have company. He he didn't meet many women living alone as he did in his little cabin in the woods. Eventually, Jessica started to get sleepy. It was almost 2 o'clock in the morning. It was almost 2 o'clock in the morning. Bob told her she could take his bed and would sleep in his chair. She climbed into bed, fully dressed, and before long was sleeping soundly. She looked like she needed the rest. Bob watched her as she slept. He thought she was one of the most gorgeous girls he had ever seen. He wondered if she could fall in love with a man like him. She was the kind of woman he had longed for all of his life. Young, brown hair, and beautiful. As Jessica slept on the bed, he sat in the chair listening to music on the radio. He kept the volume low so that he wouldn't wake Jessica. Then just he was dozing off the music, the radio was interrupted by a local news broadcast. The reporter said that the police was combing the area in search of a prisoner who would be escaped from the state hospital for the criminally insane. Bob's ears perked up. Yep. The reporter said that the woman who had escaped was armed and dangerous. She had been convicted of grisly murders of her husband and four other men and was sent to prison. Psychologists who examined her declared her mentally ill and she was transferred to the state hospital for the criminally insane. However, as she was beginning to transport her, she managed to overpower her guards using a knife she had stolen from the prison cafeteria. She stabbed them to death and escaped into the woods. The police had been searching for her all day. On the radio, they gave a description of the crazy lady. She was 5'4", 26-year-old brunette and very attractive. Been she had been wearing a prison uniform when she escaped, but they say she would probably try to steal some clothes to disguise herself. The police warned people to be on the lookout for the crazy lady and advised anyone who came across her to keep their distance. Bob's blood froze as he looked at Jessica, lying there peacefully on his bed. She fit the description perfectly: young, brunette, beautiful, and completely insane. She was the escaped maniac the police were looking for. He was sure of it, and he was sure of something else too. She was planning to kill him while he slept. He wasn't going to let that happen. He knew what to do. Suddenly, Bob jumped out of a chair and threw open the front door of the cabin. Jessica awoke with a fright and looked at him, a confused expression on her face. He grabbed her by the hair, pulling her out of the bed and began dragging her towards the door. She started screaming and her arms flailed wildly, trying to catch hold of him. He managed to wrestle her to the front door. Then, with a mighty heave, he threw her out into the darkness. She landed on the grass outside and immediately jumped out and came running back toward the door. Bob slammed the wooden door, shut it in just enough time to lock it and bolt it before she slammed into it. He braced himself against the door, expecting her to break it down at any moment. He could hear her outside pounding on the cabin door with her fists, kicking with her boots, and shouting at him to let her in. And then he heard a scream, an ear-splitting shriek that made him shiver. It sounded like the howl of a crazed animal, the kind of sound that could only be made by a person who completely insane. Then there was a horrible silence. He could hear something shifting and moving about outside the wooden door. He was shaking with fear, ready for anything. After a while, he noticed a thin trickle of blood coming under the door. Soon it turned into a pool of blood flowing across the floor at his feet. Gathering his wits about him, Bob started open the front door, and was horrified by what he found. Jessica was lying there in a pool of blood, and a large knife was sticking out of her head. She was completely naked, and her eyes were glazed over. His mind raced as he tried to understand the strange scene that lay before him, but stranger still was a neat pile of blue clothing which was sitting on the grass beside Jessica's dead body. Reaching over her naked corpse, he picked up the blue clothes and turned them over in his hand. He realized it was the blue uniform. There was some black lettering printed on the back. It read State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. He fell to his knees beside the dead girl's body, and his family understood what happened. The crazy lady had murdered Jessica for her clothes. Continue to the next part. The little girl on a tricycle. I was driving home from work one night when I see a little girl on a tricycle riding across the street and into some wood that dropped off into a creek. I braked and skidded to avoid her and walked to where I thought she fell. I see no one and a cop pulls up to ask me what I am doing. I tell him he was the person I needed and I was still in my security uniform. And tell him that I saw the girl riding her tricycle across the street heading into the area where it dropped off. He tells me right away that I see what some other drivers here see. It was more than 40 years ago a child was killed riding her tricycle across a section of the road. Others have seen her multiple times, sometimes walking, o- other times on her tricycle. After some construction brought change to that section of road with expansions and barrier, the settings all ceased. Next part. Devil's Tower. Devil's Tower. Alpine, Alpine, New Jersey is a large Gothic stone tower. Locals call it the Devil's Tower. According to the legend, it was built in the early 1900s by a plantation owner named Manuel Rionda. He built a large mansion for his wife, and he also built her the tower so she could look out over the New York City skyline. One night, his wife was looking out of the tower when she saw Manuel with another woman. The wife was so distraught to discover that her husband was cheating on her that she immediately jumped off the tower and fell to her death. Manuel was devastated and racked with guilt, and he had the mansion demolished. The tower was supposed to be torn down as well, but the plans had to be scrapped when several workmen mysteriously fell to their deaths. Manuelius moved away and left the tower locked up and abandoned. Rumors began to circulate that the tower was haunted, and many people reported hearing strange noises as they passed by. Others spotted a shadowy female figure looking in the tower windows. They say that if you go there at night, you might catch a glimpse of the ghostly apparition of the wife jumping from the tower or hear her disembodied screams as she plunges to her death. After years went by, locals started to calling it the Devil's Tower, and they say it was cursed. According to legend, if you walk backwards around the tower 6 times at midnight, the devil would appear. The members of a tower in the twisted satanic cult became obsessed with the devil's towers, and they congregated that at night to hold black masses and the worship the devil. They also carried out bloody rituals in which they would sacrifice animals in honor of the devil. During the city, children who lived in the area would find the gory remains of these mauled cats and dogs. The leader of the satanic cult had a very special sacrifice planned for Halloween night. He wanted his followers to murder an innocent young girl, right, girl, and offer her soul up to the devil. The crazed cult members began staking out the local high school, searching for victims. They set their sight on a teenage girl named Laura, who happened to be their homecoming queen. When Halloween arrived, the cult members were waiting outside the high school in a black van. After classes ended up, they watched Laura say goodbye to her friends and started walking home alone. Driving slowly, they followed her in the van, making sure to keep their distance. Years before Laura reached her home, the black van suddenly sped up and swerved in front of her, blocking her path. The door flew open, and the cult members jumped out. They grabbed the frightened teenage girl and threw into the back of the van. After tying her hands and feet with ropes and gagging her with a dirty cloth, the van sped off. That night, while trick-or-treaters went from door to door collecting candies, the police went from door to door asking if anyone had seen Laura. Nobody knew what happened to her. He worried what happened to her. Her worried parents combed the streets, but they couldn't find any trace of her. It was as if she had disappeared into thin air. The next morning, some kids were playing near the Devil's Tower, stumbled across a horrible scene. Inside the walls were splattered with blood, what remains of Laura's mutilated body lay on a cold stone slab. Her heart had been cut out and her internal organs were scattered around on the floor. The police searched everywhere for members of the satanic cult, but they were nowhere to be found. Not one of the cult members was ever seen alive again. Ever since that day, they say that if you go to the Devil's Tower on Halloween night, you will see a frightening apparition of a young girl dressed in a bloody gown emerging from the mist and begging for someone to save her. I've been to the Devil's Tower a few months ago. Wow. Clown statue. A few years ago, there was a wealthy couple who had two young children, a boy and a girl. The family lived in a large house in Newport Beach, California. After taking care of the kids all week, the mother and father decided that they needed a break, so they booked a table for dinner at a nice restaurant. That evening, they called a teenage girl they knew and arranged for her to come over and babysit the children. While they were out, when the babysitter arrived, the parents told her to fix supper for the kids and put them to bed. After that, they can just watch TV and have yourself anything to the fridge, said the father. And if you don't mind, said the mother, could you watch TV in our bedroom? The kids have been having nightmares recently, so if you hear them crying, you can just go in and calm them down. The babysitter happily agreed, and the parents left for dinner. Date. The girl saved. The girl gave the children some milk and cookies, then ushered them upstairs to bed. She started to read them a bedtime story, and before long, the little boy and girl were fast asleep. After tucking them in, she switched off the lights and went to watch TV. When the babysitters walked into the parents' bedroom and sat down, she noticed that there was a creepy-looking clown statue standing in the corner of the room. She tried to ignore it, but it looked so eerie and disturbing that it sent a chill down her spine. She felt as though its eyes were staring straight at her while she watched TV. And as time passed, the babysitter started to feel more and more uneasy about the clown statue. When she glanced at it, she got the unsettling feeling that it had moved ever so, s- ever so slightly. Finally, the clown statue had began to freak her out so much that she couldn't handle it any longer. She decided to go downstairs and phone the parents. When she dialed the number they had left her, the mother answered. Hi, it's me, said the babysitter. Everything is fine. The kids are fast asleep, but I was just wondering, would would be okay if we watch TV downstairs? Of course, replied the father. But why? I know it sounds silly, the girl, but the clown statue is really creeping me out. The clown statue? Asked the father. Yeah, the clown statue is in your bedroom, the girl replied. The phone went silent for a moment. L- l- just listen to me very carefully, said the father. Take the children, get out of the house. We're calling the police. Go now. What's wrong? The father gulped and replied, we don't have a clown statue. For a second, the babysitter just stood there, stunned. Then she dropped the phone and raced upstairs to grab the children, carrying under each arm. She raced down the stairs again and fled out into the street. Huddled on the sidewalk, comforting the two children, the babysitter looked up at the bedroom window and saw nothing, and saw something that made her scream out in horror. Digging through a gap, the curtains was the white painted face of a clown. As it stared at her for a moment, then sank back into the darkness. Within minutes, the police arrived cautiously entered the house. In an upstairs bedroom, they found a man dressed in a clown suit. When they arrested him, they found a knife concealed in his costume. The clown turned out to be a mentally disturbed midget who was convicted murderer and cold-blooded killer. The evil man had been stalking the family for months, lurking in the attic during the daytime and coming out to sneak around the house at night. For weeks, the children had been complaining about a clown statue. They stood in the room and watched them sleep, but the parents just dismissed them as nightmares. Continue to next part. Babysitter. There was a young girl who was in need of a job, was able to find work as a babysitter for a couple who lived large, isolated old house. They were going out to see a movie that night and left the teenage babysitter in charge of their three young children. The babysitter put the children to bed when it got late and then went downstairs to watch some television. She was just eating comfortable when she heard the phone ring. When she answered it, all she heard was heavy breathing, followed by a man's voice asking, "Have you checked under the children?" Freaked out, she hung up the phone, trying to convince herself that it was just someone playing a practical joke on her. She went back to watch television, but about 15 minutes later, the phone rang again. She picked up the receiver and heard hysterical laughter from the other end of the line. The same voice asked, "Why haven't you checked on the children?" The babysitter slammed down the phone. The poor girl was frightened out of her wits and immediately called the police. Time to trace the call. A few minutes later, the phone rang a third time, and when the babysitter answered it, she heard the heavy breathing again. The voice on the line said, "You should really check on the children." The babysitter listened to him, laughing hysterically. For a long time, she hung up. She hung up the phone again, and almost immediately it rang again. This time it was the operator for the phone from the police station who yelled, "Get out of the house right now." Calls are coming from the upstairs phone. The visitor dropped the phone, shocked, and suddenly she heard heavy footsteps walking down the stairs without pausing for a second. She ran out, she ran out of the house as fast as her legs would carry her. Just as she closed the front door behind her, a man's hand slammed against the glass. She screamed and ran out into the street just as the police car was pulling up outside. The police searched the house and found out the two children upstairs hiding in the closet, crying uncontrollably in the parents' bedroom. They found a bloody axe lying on the floor next to the upstairs phone. The back window was wide open and the curtains were blowing in the breeze. There was no sign of the madman who had made the phone call. He had escaped into the night when the police arrived and managed to interrupt this horrible plan to kill the two children and the poor babysitter. Continue to next part. The hook. Once one night, a teenage boy was going out on a date with his new girlfriend. He picked up at her house and they drove out to the edge of town. They parked the car in a secluded spot that was a well-known lover's lane. As they gazed out of the light of the town, the boy put his arm around the girls and switched on the car radio so they could listen to some romantic music. He leaned over and the young couple began kissing and cuddling. Just as they were getting into the mood, the music suddenly stopped and a newsreader voice came on the radio. This is an emergency announcement. Earlier tonight, a crazed murderer escaped from the state mental asylum. Police are warning citizens to be on their guard since the patient is considered armed and dangerous. The insane killer is nicknamed the Hookman because after he lost his right hand in an accident, it was replaced with a steel hook. Anyone in the area should be on the lookout for a man fitting this description. If you see anything suspicious, you should report it to the police immediately. The girl became frightened and asked to be taken home. She knew the state insane asylum was not far from the lovers' lane. She was also worried that the remote area the park was the perfect spot for a dangerous madman to lurk. The boy was feeling brave and assured his girlfriend that they were perfectly safe. He locked all the car doors and then tried to kiss her. Again, the girl became frightened and pushed him away, insisting that they leave immediately. In a huff, the boy slammed the car into gear and spun its wheels as pulled out of the parking space. On the way back to town, they both calmed down, but the girl still held on tightly to her boyfriend. When they pulled up outside the girl's house, the boy got out of the car and walked around to open the door for his girlfriend. For a long time, he just stood there, staring at the door. At first, the girl couldn't figure out was wrong. Then she realized that her door was still locked. She smiled and unlocked it. Still, the boy just stood there. The girl was puzzled and rolled down her window. Then she saw that the boy was staring down the door handle. Slowly, she looked down herself and began to scream uncontrollably. There was a there hanging from the door handle. There, hanging from the door handle, was a bloody stainless steel hook. Continue to the next part. Gore Orphanage. The legend of Gore Orphanage began with a married couple named Johann and Katharina Sprunger who lived in Indiana after the young son and daughter died under mysterious circumstances. Mr. and Mrs. Sprunger decided to start an orphanage. They called orphanage the Light of Hope orphanage. Unfortunately, it burned down in 1899 and three orphan girls were burned alive in the blaze. Putting this tragedy behind them, the Sprungers moved to Vermilion, Ohio, where they started a new orphanage in 1903. It was called Gore Orphanage, and eventually they had over 100 boys and girls living there. But it was not well with the children of Gore Orphanage. Rumors of darkness and despair soon plagued the old place. The children told horrific stories of abuse, neglect, and slave labors. Mrs. Sprunger cooked cow's head and lungs and forced the children to eat the foul meat or starve. Mrs. Sprunger beat the poor kids with a leather strap until their bodies were covered in bloody welts and bruises. He would also rent out the children to local farmers as slave labor. The boys and girls were only allowed to wash themselves once every 2 weeks, and they all had to use the same bath and dirty bath water. The children's rooms were infested with rats which crawled into their beds and bit them while they lay asleep. Soon the terrified children began trying to escape from Gord Orphanage. Some of them managed to run away from the home, wading through the Vermilion River and finding refuge with some generous people in Vermilion. One cold night in December 1923, the orphanage caught on fire. Nobody knows how the blaze started. Some people say that one of the orphans accidentally knocked over an oil lamp. Others say Mr. Sprunger started the fire because he hated children and wanted to collect insurance money. That night, the orphanage burned to the ground with all the children trapped inside. The fire spread through the old building, springing from one room to another. The children desperately tried to spring from one room to another. Wait, the night Go orphanage burned to the ground with all the children trapped inside. The fire swept through the old building, springing from one room to another. The children desperately tried to escape the inferno, but the stairs was blocked by flames. The dreadful cries and screams of the children trapped inside the blazing building could be heard by horrified onlookers. The deadly fire continued to burn until the screams finally fell silent, and the orphanage was reduced to a charred, smoking shell. The blaze had claimed the lives of over 100 poor orphan children. Ever since that night, people have seen strange apparitions and ghostly figures lurking in the fields where Gore Orphanage once stood. They said if you go there late at night, you can still hear the sound of children screaming and pleading for help. There, the air is still sound of children screaming. The air is still filled with smell of burning flesh and roasted children. Despite the fact that the site is now a vacant field, many people have heard that the sound of doors opening and shutting in the footsteps walking across the wooden floors. There also an old tire swinging from a tree near the site, where they say you can see a ghostly young boy swinging silently back and forth. Dark sleep. So my dad has two best friends named Jenny and Amber. Was taking her on a weekend vacation, she invited them to come along. Her family owned a cabin in the woods, and on Friday evening, her father drove the girls up there. See the lake, asked Samantha when they arrived. That's Lake Samantha. My dad grew up here, and he loved it so much he named me after it. That night, after they had unpacked their things, the three girls sat around and thought of a way to amuse themselves. Does anyone have any spooky stories? Asked Amber. I have one, said Jenny. It's a true story. It happens to a friend mine. He was babysitting these two little kids one night. She's sitting in the dark by herself watching TV and the phone rings. She goes over and answers it and hears a voice on the other end breathing really heavy and it says, Have you checked have you checked on the children? Jenny, come on, Aaron interrupted. Everybody hear that one. That's the lamest, scariest story ever. Does anyone else have a story? One that's actually true. I know one, Samantha said. About 10 minutes hike from here, there's an old broken down house. We pass it on the way up here. It's out in the middle of nowhere, tucked away off a narrow little side road. A long time ago, a man lived there. His family were really wealthy and they owned hundreds of acres of land around here. This man met a simple country girl from a simple country town and they fell in love. The family wasn't too happy about it. They didn't think the girl was good enough for him, but he ignored them. He was an independent type of a guy and he went off and built a little house on a chunk of their land and out in the middle of nowhere. He married this girl and everything was wonderful. They had the daughter and eventually they had a son. This is where the story starts to go bad. The son was sick, not physically but mentally. He was sick in the head. He wasn't mentally disabled or anything. He was just a little off. By the time he was 9 years old, he became too much for his parents to handle, throwing temper tantrums, erratic sleeping patterns, disappearing into the woods and hiding, that kind of thing, not knowing what to do about his son. The man turned to his family for help. His parents had the boy taken away. They sent him to a place deep in the woods. Was it wasn't an insane asylum, but it but it catered to people with special needs, if you know what I mean. His parents thought it was for the best. Over time, the family got used to not having him around. They gradually stopped visiting him. They functioned as if they had never even had a son, and everything went back to being wonderful again. 8 years later, the boy was about 16 or 17 at this time, managed to escape from the hospital. The staff did a search, but he was nowhere to be found. His family was notified, and they were devastated. They were worried for his safety. He had been unknown in the wilderness for weeks, and he was probably dead. But the boy wasn't dead. One night he found his way back home. He crept into his house, and one by one he slaughtered his entire family, his father, his mother, his sister, all of them chopped to pieces, with, with the blood still dripping from his ass. With the blood still dripping from his axe, he disappeared into the woods. When the grisly remains of his family were discovered a few days later, the townfolk in the surrounding area were horrified. The police tried to find the boy, but it was no use. To this day, he has never been found. Since then, every year around harvest time, people have started to go missing, and their place, a corn husk doll, will be left behind. Legend has it the boy still roams the woods around these parts. The surrounding towns have brought into the legends, and they say those by the front door for protection. For, they say if the boy sees a doll hanging from the door of a house, he will pass the house by and leave the residents in peace. Nobody knows if it's true or not, but there's a doll hanging from the door of every house in town. This is so creepy, cried Jenny. Do you have a doll on your door? Of course, says Samantha. My dad says he doesn't believe the legend, but we hung one just in case. I think I just soiled my underwear, said Amber. Apparently, the house is still haunted by the ghost of his murdered family, and if you go up there late at night, you can hear the whole thing taking place all over again. Do you think we could go up there, Jenny asked. Sure, says Amanda, but tomorrow during daylight there's no sense in tempting fate. That night the girls slept in the same room and huddled together, trying to pretend they weren't frightened by the story and expect to hear something tapping at the window at any moment. Next morning, Samantha's father made them all big breakfast and they went down to the lake for a swim. Around noon, they decided to make the trip up to the old haunted house. When they got there, the girls sensed an eerie presence old in dilapidated place. It was enough to make the skin crawl. They explored the ruins of the old house, peeking into the corners and sifting through the rubble. After a while, Samantha spotted something half buried in the dirt. It was some sort of book. She's dug it out and dusted it off. The girls gathered around as she opened and began to flip through the yellow pages. It, it's like a diary or something, Samantha. Maybe it's his diary, Jenny whispered. Whose diary? Asked Amber. The guy, said Jenny. The guy that killed his family. Samantha read the diary aloud as the other listened. As the other listened. There's a dedication inscribed inside the covers, she said. It reads to a family who I love and cherish and who will always be with me. She said September 5th, 1987. It had it has been hard alone. All they had to do was talk to me. They could not talk to me. I hear their voices late at night. Sometimes I hear their screams. It's cold and dark and needed love. They did not love me. The medicines are gone. I'm free. Free from all of them. If they could not love me, they had to go dark sleep for everyone. I hear their voices still, always screaming. December 4th, 1987, they have stopped looking for me. It is okay for me now. I live in the forest. I chase down the animals and put them in dark sleep, just like mom and dad insist. I visit my old house at night. I listen to the voices. At least they talk to me now. October October 3rd, 1995. I left the forest years ago and moved to a small town nearby. Nobody recognizes me. Nobody knows who I am. I hear people telling my stories sometimes, make me laugh inside. They all fear me. I still come to the forest sometimes. I spend the nights in my old house. Mom and dad still talk to me. They said they are very they said they are very proud of me. November 2nd, 1998. Life has been good. I found a job. I bought a house. I met a girl. She's very quiet and pretty. Sometimes I bring her to the forest. She likes it. I let mom and dad see her. They like her. July 1st, 2000. Today is a great day. I have a baby now. I'm so happy. Mom and dad are grandparents now. My wife isn't doing so well, though it was hard for her. She might not make it. Maybe she'll go in dark sleep. I am happy now. August 13th, 2010. I'm so proud of my children. She is just like me, except she is much smarter. She has no problem. She doesn't hear the voices. She goes to school and has lots of friends, not like me. So sometimes I take her to the woods. I love her so much, and I name her after Lake Samantha. A few moments after Samantha stopped reading, there was a stunned silence. What the heck? Cried Jenny. Samantha, is this some sort of joke? Amber asked nervously. It isn't funny. This this can't be true, Samantha whispered. It couldn't possibly be. Just then they heard the sound of twigs snapping behind them. When they turned around, they saw Samantha's father standing there. There was a strange, pained look on his face, and he was holding an axe in his hand. You weren't supposed to find that, he muttered. There's no other way now. Dark sleep for everyone. No, Dad, Samantha screamed. No, 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 no. When Samantha father had finished chopping up the bodies, put the pieces in the large plastic bags, and buried them deep in the woods. So deep that no one would ever find them. They could be together forever. I'll watch over you now, he mumbled as he patted down the earth with his shovel. You may not understand now, but you will in time. This is the only way for us to be together. Dark sleep forever. We all stay together. Wow, the dad is a bad guy. Continue to next part. Evil grin. When I was 12 years old, I had a best friend named Brenda. After school, we always went to her house to hang out. She lived in a big house on the edge of town. One day, Brenda didn't show up for school. She was absent for the next 2 days, and I began wondering if there was something was wrong with her. After she had missed a whole week of school, I decided to pay her a visit. I struggled all the way across town and arrived at her house just as it was getting dark outside. When I rang the doorbell, I got a shock when the door opened almost immediately. Mother Mother was standing in the doorway, but there was something strange about her. Her eyes seemed darker than usual, and her hair was hanging loose around her shoulders. I noticed that she was wearing a bathrobe. The most unsettling thing was the way she was grinning at me. She didn't say a word, she just stood there staring at me with an evil smile playing across her lips. Is Brendan here? I asked. She beckoned at me to come in, and before I could say anything, she had slipped back into the darkened house. As I stepped inside, my eyes strained to see in the darkness, but I wasn't sure where she had gone. Just then I heard a strange humming sound and followed it into the kitchen. I found her there, standing at the kitchen, sink with her back towards me. The moment I entered the kitchen, she stopped humming, and there was an eerie silence. I took a seat at the kitchen table and waited. She seemed to be talking forever. I spent the next 5 minutes just sitting there, wondering what was going. Then I realized something very odd. The whole time I had been sitting there, she wasn't moved a muscle. Her back was still towards me, and I couldn't see her face. Her hand hung limp by her side, and her head was tilted slightly. Something was very wrong. I stood up nervously and approached her. She remained completely still. Ever so slowly, I moved around her and tried to get a look at her face to see if she was alright. The sight still haunts me to this very day. Her eyes were wide open and she still had the evil grin on her face. I was so freaked out that I couldn't bear to stay in the kitchen. Bear in the kitchen. Bear to stay in the kitchen. A moment longer. Without saying a word, I backed out of the room and made my way towards the front door. I jumped on my bike and began cycling as fast as I could down the long, winding driveway and all the way across town. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of my house. It wasn't until a few days later that I found out my friend Brenda had been absent from school. My, 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 my parents told me that there had been a tragic death in Brenda's family. What? I asked. Who died? My parents broke the sad news to me and it made my hair stand on end and I was crying from fright. Brenda, Brenda's, Brenda's mother had died suddenly and that night I called over to her. Over to her house. Brenda had been at her grandparents' place attending the funeral. Years later, when I was 16 years old, I made a little extra money by working as a babysitter on weekends. One evening, a friend of mine called me and said she knew a family who desperately needed a babysitter. She was busy and wanted to know if I was interested babysitting for them instead. She told me the parents were very nice, the pay was good, and their 3-year-old daughter was polite and well behaved. I wasn't doing any important things, so I told her I will be glad to take the job. That evening, I went to the family's house and met the mother. Her name was Ruth, and she was getting ready to go out for the night with friends. She mentioned that her husband was out of town on business and gave me some numbers to call if I needed to get in touch with her. That night went very easily. I made dinner for the little girl, gave her a bubble bath, then got her dressed for bed. It was around midnight when I heard the front door open and footsteps coming down the hallway. I thought it was strange because I hadn't even heard a car pull up. Turning around, I was relieved to see Ruth making her way into the living room where I was sitting watching TV. She never said a word to me and she walked past me. I was surprised by how different she looked. Something about her eyes had changed and she was grinning from ear to ear. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. I knew that evil grin. I had seen it before many years ago. Ruth sat at the dining table with her back turned towards me. Her hands hung limp by her sides. Her head was cocked to the left, and she was humming to herself. Ruth? I asked nervously. Ruth, are you alright? No answer. Ruth, you're not alive anymore, are you? Silence. With shaking hands, I quickly gathered my things and backed out the room. When I got to the hallway, I opened the front door and looked outside. There was no car in the driveway. All of a sudden, the eerie silence was broke by the sound of the phone ringing. I didn't want to answer it. I was afraid of what I might hear. For a moment, my hand seemed to hover over the phone. Then I lifted the receiver and put it to my ear. I already knew who it was. It was the police calling to tell me that Ruth had been involved in a car accident an hour ago. She had been killed on impact. Tears streaming down my face as I ran upstairs, grabbed Ruth's daughter from her bed and bundled her up in her blanket. As I came back downstairs, I had to pass by the door to the living room. I could still see Ruth sitting at the table with her back to me without pausing. For a second, I ran out into the night carrying the little girl in my arms. Continue to next part. Demon of Detroit. The final part. Okay, guys, gonna stop this one. I will be back because I have to eat. So, yeah, I'll be back reading The Demon of Detroit in the next part of the video. Bye bye, guys. Take care.